You are listening to Rip It Up, the Renovations podcast.
Hi, I'm Kate. I run the Instagram page Victorian Math Minds.
And I'm Jenny. I run the Instagram account Workers Cottage.
This podcast is all about renovation and interiors from the renovator's perspective. We've been through it a few times between us and it hasn't scared us off.
In fact, we loved it. So if you are planning to do up your own home, you can expect to hear lots of advice from our own experience, along with plenty of tips and inspiration.
In today's episode, we're going to help you find your interior style. You know what you like in pictures, but you're not sure exactly how to pull it together in your own space. Kate and Jenny will take you through some tips on how to pull it all together and some tricks to get that professional look.
Welcome back to the podcast. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Jen.
We're in season 2. It's fully back after our lovely summer holidays.
Yep.
And we're on episode 17 of the podcast. Thank you so much to everyone who's been listening so far. We love doing these. And we just love...
And some lovely feedback recently.
Yeah.
Someone messaged me recently and said it was the best interior/renovation podcast they ever heard.
If you think that, please message us and let us know, because we love it, hearing it. So thank you everyone who's been listening, who's been sending messages or asking questions. We're loving it.
But also, if you think we're missing a trick, we stink. Tell us that too. And how we can get better.
Yeah.
What topics should we cover? What should we do? Yeah.
We always want
open
topic
feedback.
ideas.
Always open feedback.
I love when people message me and say, would you do an article on this? Would you do a podcast episode on that? Because it's just great to be able to give people what they want, you know? Okay, so on that topic, what we're talking about today, one kind of a bit of an amalgamation of things that we get lots of questions on, which is really just around like finding your own style, developing your own style, putting a look together, translating what you've seen on Pinterest and Architectural Digest and Instagram and everything into an actual room. Like, how do you do that? Probably first things first is that it's really hard. That's why being a good interior designer is really hard. And so working with somebody is always a great idea. But there are some just tips, guidelines that can help.
Yeah. I have a million Pinterest boards. For myself, for clients, whatever. But I have a million of them. But then sometimes I've pinned something so long ago that when I go back into it, I'm like, why did I like this picture? And it might have been like a detail of the picture as opposed to the overall feel of the picture or something. But I've kind of lost it in time. I'm like, I don't even know why I pinned this. Like, I don't even like it now.
You're like, I like that light switch.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I forgot.
This then kind of reminds me, it's great to have Pinterest boards, but you also need to kind of bring them all together somewhere, whether that's a mood board or whatever. But we might get into that a little bit detail later.
Yeah. Okay. I have these kind of principles. So if you look into the world of interior design, at a high level, there's typically 7 principles. Sometimes you'll see 8 or 9 or even 10, depending on who's kind of putting the guide together. But there's 7 that I always stick to, and I love it. And I think it's really helpful to go through them. And actually, if you're somebody who's, you know, in the process of putting together what you like and wondering how to translate it to real life, what can be really good is to look through photos of very well done rooms or homes and try to be like, where have they applied that principle, or where have they done that, and why, you know, try to understand like, why does it work? You start
identifying it yourself.
What do I like about it? What looks good here? So I'm going to go through them.
Okay.
First one is proportion and scale. So this is fairly straightforward. Make sure that the stuff that you're putting into the space suits the size of the space. So if you have really tall ceilings, for example, long chandeliers or pendant lights or high mirrors or something like that.
Big lamps. Tiny lamps look stupid if you have high ceilings.
Don't put a tiny doll furniture into a huge room or into any room. And not only that, but that the items that you're putting in are balanced in relation to each other. So you don't have this one big hulking sofa in the middle of the room and then all these little tiny chairs. Like they need to be in the right scale and proportion to each other. So fairly straightforward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense for sure.
The next thing is balance. So this is quite similar to scale, and there's a few different types of balance. This is that the items that you're putting across a room are balancing each other out.
Yeah.
So you don't have something massive on one side of the room and then something that's a completely different shape, size, etc. on the other side. There's a few ways of doing this. One is that you just have, for example, if you can think of, 2 sofas opposite a coffee table and they're just mirroring each other. So that's like mirrored balance. One is asymmetrical. So you might have one large sofa maybe faced with 2 armchairs, but overall they make up roughly the same size as each other, if that makes sense. Yeah. The 2 armchairs together roughly the same size as the sofa. And then there's something called radial, which is where you have something in the middle and then you have items coming out from it in slightly either diminishing or increasing scale. So you could have...
How does that work? Like a dining table kind
Yeah,
of
you could have... That's perfect in a dining room. So you have like a big dining table in the middle of the dining room and then you have slightly smaller and smaller pieces of furniture coming
and you've lesser
from
pieces, like an atom.
In the outer. That's... Yeah.
But actually the balance one is really key.
This is actually a science podcast. No.
We are both kind of nerds at the end of the day.
We're huge nerds. Excuse me, kind of. I'm massive nerd. I'm definitely a massive nerd.
So the balance one is actually key. And do you know where this kind of comes in? I think there was a bit of a trend of buying kind of always a suite of furniture, 3, 2 and 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
And like it's
imbalanced.
It's really imbalanced and it doesn't really work. But also I don't know if I want two big 3-seaters taking over my whole room. So I always think like a 3-seater, like you said, facing 2 armchairs that make up the same length, but maybe a little table in between, or a 3 facing a 2 and the 2 has an end table or a big lamp beside it or something. And it makes that exactly, like you said, a square and balances the 2 sides. I think that's so key.
Yeah. And you can cluster things, like you said, and that applies to lots of things. For example, if you're doing, a picture wall or shelf styling or something like that, think about the overall outline of the group of things that you're putting together. That's the total size, even if there's kind of gaps between them or something like that.
Yeah. So a big lamp behind an armchair and a big window or something like that. Yeah.
It's the overall outline of those things.
But a lamp in the middle on its own bay window will just look stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Makes
total sense.
Then number 3 is unity. You'll also see this written down as harmony sometimes. So this is where you've some kind of commonality throughout the house.
Yeah.
Normally this might be even things as basic as like skirting boards, for example, or maybe your base wall color is the same, or maybe you have some kind of recurring fabric, flooring is one. Maybe you have recurring pattern throughout the house. It's just something that ties the space together. So you don't have this completely disjointed style in every room that you go into, which is kind of, I don't know, unsettling.
I also think the continuity makes a space seem more seamless, but also seem bigger if it's a smaller space. So that continuity, like in our house at the moment, it's a bit of a mishmash until we renovate, but like the skirting, like you said, isn't matched everywhere. And where they've added on extra bits, there's different skirting. There's a square skirting and then there's the old molded kind of Taurus one in another part of the house. And it feels like every time you see something different, you're like, oh, it's another area. Oh, it's another area. And it's juddy outbits. And you don't get that continuity of space. And I think it does. It breaks your line of sight. It makes rooms feel like truncated or whatever. So I think it's key. And it can be done in physical things like your skirting, like you said, and your floor or whatever. But it can also be done with your colour palette.
Yeah. And I think it is more the background things because we don't want everything to be the same at all. We'll come back to that. But it's the things that are fade more into the background, like your skirting or maybe your main wall color or the style of your doors and door handles and maybe light switches, those types of things have at least a common style.
Yeah,
if
gives
not
a nice flow for sure.
Yeah. Then I love this one. Rhythm is number 4. So this is really about repetition. Slightly different to unity. This is if you have, my favorite way of thinking about this is that rule of 3, and we've spoken about it on this podcast before. If you're using, for example, a pop of color, or you're using a really unusual fabric, or just something kind of bold and bright, or a bit more out there, repeat the color. So I think the example I used in our last episode was my couch is yellow, turmeric yellow. And I've picked that up through yellow cushions over in the dining area, through some yellow accents in my kitchen. So have,
it's not completely isolated.
Exactly.
And it's even in like some little pops in your artwork or, Yeah. It's a really great way of tying everything together then.
Yeah, exactly. So that could be as well through pattern. So if you have, bold wallpaper in a room or it's certain fabric that's draped over a sofa, like repeat that a couple of times. Maybe it's stripes, it doesn't have to be the exact same color and the exact same shape, but maybe stripes are your thing and you have like a stripy something or other and it's picked up somewhere else. So rule of 3 is a really good one for rhythm, and that the brain loves that when there's just a bit of repetition throughout and you're like, oh, I've seen that before.
You don't know why. I think sometimes when you go into another room and you see that again, or another part of the house and you see that again, you don't know why it looks good, but you're like, it's because your brain has seen it before.
Yeah.
I just think, again, it's that continuity,
another one actually
that
for
flow.
me that I have done rhythm-wise is the wall paneling in my house. So my kitchen, the kitchen cupboard doors are panelled with vertical panels. I have the same in the downstairs bedroom. It's a different colour, but it's the same. and I have the same in the upstairs bedroom. And they're all different colours. They're all in different places, but the brain loves that. Yeah, I've seen this before. This belongs here, you know?
Love it.
Then emphasis is number 5. So this is having a focal point in every room. I think
this isn't a feature wall, is it?
Please don't have a feature wall. Please don't have a feature wall. Accent walls are dead. Just let them die.
Yeah. And don't put your TV into a wall, because your TV you'll outgrow your TV in a few years probably, and you'll probably get a new TV, and then you have a hole in your wall to fit that TV.
Yeah. We spoke about this in our layouts episode, I think it was.
I think a focal point, a really contentious focal point for me in my living room is our TV. We talked
but
about
you
this,
have the right TV.
We have the frame TV, but,
which is really a piece
but
of
some
art.
people are like, that should never be a focal point. So yeah.
But the Samsung frame TV is actually art. Because
Yes,
you mostly have art up
technically
there
it is.
unless you're actually watching the television.
Well, it's mostly fucking Peppa Pig at the moment, actually. Not technically art.
It couldn't be considered art. We'll let the cultural historians battle that one out in a few years' time. But yeah, have a focal point. So we spoke about this before. This could be, for example, having a really dramatic backsplash in your kitchen or countertop. This could be having a really bright coloured sofa and some accent armchairs. This could be like a really dramatic dining table. Like, decide in each room what is your focal point, and then how are you designing around that.
And if there are too many focal points or things vying for your attention, I'd say it becomes confusing, like not very settling, I think, when you go into space.
Yeah.
So if you've really, really, I don't know, mad colour kitchen doors, and then you have mad marble as well on top of it, is it too much?
Yeah.
So it's one or the other kind of thing.
You'll see it on the Ugly Irish Houses Instagram page.
A good example of this is like the high gloss red kitchens that had a bit of a moment, I think, in the noughties, and then a glittery granite top.
I mean,
class. It looks like a disco.
A lot went down around the turn of the millennium.
Should never be repeated.
Yeah. Okay, we're nearly there. Number 6 is contrast. This is pretty simple.
Yeah.
It could be a colour or it could be a texture, but the brain loves contrast. It makes everything feel deeper, more interesting. Things grab your attention a little bit more. So this could be bringing in just a richer, deeper colour even through your cushions on your kitchen sofa or your door handles or just accent vases or something like that. Bring in some deep, rich coloured contrast.
Yeah.
It could just be black. That's absolutely
I like
fine
that
too.
actually in throw cushions. And I think it's a lovely way of changing up a whole space. Like I see the ones you have in your banquette or all the different patterns and stuff. But I have on one of my sofas, it's a kind of a grey old sofa that we have, but I have like 3 or 4 different type of back cushions, of like a boucle one, then there's like a cotton velvet one, and then there's a bit of a weave one. And even though it's almost all the same colour, that texture completely differentiates them and makes it look much better, I think.
Like layering textures is something that the brain just absolutely loves. It's a way to just instantly make your house feel more expensive, more interesting, more put together. So yeah, like a lovely big wool throw, or like those really chunky knit throws over your microfiber or the velvet sofa. Like that's lovely. Something deep against something shallow. Like it's great. So layer textures. Curtains are another great way to do that. Like a really thick curtain fabric overlaid on top of a voile behind it for the privacy. Like that. We love that. Okay, and the last one is on details. It's not very specific, is it? But like just really pay attention to details. Like taking something from good to great is in the detail.
And the details are different for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. So we spoke about this before in the kitchens episode. Like I wanted some of the kind of joinery details in my kitchen.
The dovetail joints.
I think about them but like often. That was just something that we kind of liked. And say even in our butler's pantry, when it was open, you could kind of see some of that woodworking detail. And I loved that. And those details were important. To some people, like details like really fancy door handles.
Yeah.
Like a load of people went for Buster and Punch, the knurled door handles, and they were like crazy money. But like that's the feature in their home, or that's the detail that they love that elevates their home. So I think your detail is something that's so personal that you love looking at every day.
And it's just making sure that something isn't ruining it. Like, you know, that your switches and sockets are neat and that the screws in them are covered over even by those little plastic inserts or something like that. That it's all, you know, it makes a difference.
I also think lighting is a great way to bring in details. Like
my favorite topic.
Yeah, like lighting, it's just like how far can you go? Like, you know, you can go like as out there or as minimalist and kind of chic. And if you go real minimalist, you want real high quality so it doesn't look cheap, you know. But then you can go total feature light as well. Like that can be really cool and it's almost art as well.
Yeah.
So that's a cool way.
And it's things like, you know, wires just not being trailed across the living room. Like it's all the little bits.
cables. Now, I have a tech geek husband, and like the one thing I say to him, I'm like, I don't care how many Alexas you have around the house or how many speakers you have, I don't want to see cables. Like, it's something that you should really consider early on, I think, in a renovation as well. It can really ruin a space.
It can.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's those 7. They're pretty straightforward, but what can be really good is, you know, if this is something that you really want to get good at, or you're thinking about doing up your own home, just have a look at like really well put together rooms or houses or something like that on Instagram, on Pinterest, on, you know, in magazines, and just look at like what is good about that. Like, why is this jumping out at me? Is it like, have they used contrast really well? Have they repeated some fabrics or patterns somewhere? You know, what's the proportion scale like in that image? Like, try to identify it, and you'll get really good through practice at learning how to put those things together yourself in your own house. Yeah.
And I think, so we all love Pinterest, right? We all love having all these kind of mood boards and stuff on our phone and in our hand or whatever on our computer. But I love interiors magazines. I love just sitting there flicking through it.
Do you have a favourite?
I don't know if I want to call. I love Image Interiors is probably the one I go to a lot. So but I like so many of them for different reasons. Like I love different ones for different reasons. But I think the style I tend to kind of go toward more. But then I love the period property ones as well. Sometimes for certain things, and I love the kitchen magazine. Anyway, I just love an interiors magazine. But what I love about interiors magazines, and this is a little tip I got. I did like this night course in interior design years ago in Galway, and she said, when you're flicking through magazines, don't just stack your magazines. If you love a picture, just rip it out of the magazine. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, but then like the magazine's ruined. But also just rip out the ones you love. You're really committing to it, and then you have it in your hand and you're like, do I really like this as much? And maybe file it away. And then maybe you stick it on a physical board, or you have a folder of kind of ones you've pulled together. And by ripping it out of the magazine, it's more of a kind of a commitment to that image. And then you're like, actually, I still love it. Actually, I'm going to keep this in my mood board or whatever. And then if you still love it after ripping it out of the magazine a week later or whatever, and it's in that folder, then you really love it. Mm-hmm. And I think adding those kind of physical, maybe then you can snap it in a photograph and add it to a mood board online if you want to, but like at least you've kind of, I don't know.
I love that.
Really,
because you do have to pick a style, right? And you're not really like, oh, I want everything, and maybe if I just mishmash it all together, like, no, you do have to narrow down. I think this quote's always attributed to Coco Chanel. I don't know if it was her, but something like, before you leave the house, look in the mirror and remove one item. Yeah. You know? So like not including things or leaving things out and refining things down is as important as getting the right stuff in the first place. And
it's really hard because sometimes I look at like these kind of modernist, kind of minimalist homes and I'm like, oh, I love that. Doesn't it look so calm and look so beautiful? And then I stay in a hotel and I'm like, I love this luxury of my bedroom. So I'm like, which one is it?
Opulence of this.
But like these big high beds and a big, headboard. And then I look at other ones that are like sleek minimalist beds and I love those too. And then you have to kind of be realistic and be like, which one is going to look the best in your house long term?
Yeah.
Which one are you going to dress the bed in to look like that? And it's probably going to be the minimalist one.
Yeah.
Unless you have maids coming in doing your beds like a hotel.
With the 27 pillows and they're all arranged in like order of whatever.
But I always think like bathrooms and bedrooms are kind of a giveaway as to kind of what style you like, because both of them are kind of high or low maintenance, I think, sometimes. And it makes me commit to one style or the other, I think.
And of course it is fine to mix and match, but in general you need some level of cohesion in terms of style.
Definitely.
You don't want like a King George III bathroom with like a throne toilet and a super ornate mirror and then just this really bare living room. Do you know? It's just jointed.
I think it has to start feeling cohesive at some point. So it's important, even if you're doing mood boards per room or Pinterest boards or whatever, if you're doing them per room, then you need to start pulling all those rooms, like a key image from each room, all on one overall house board. And then you're like, oh crap, these look crap together.
And you get that in magazines because you generally get a tour of a house in a magazine. So you get a good few rooms pulled together and you can see how they've done that and how they've, not had everything bland and samey, but how they've worked in that cohesion and made the whole house come together. The other thing is just the size of it, because your phone is small. I suppose you do on your iPad, and then it's more true to colour as well. Print.
I know. It's just not the same as the tactile of having it real. And maybe you go to a Sophie shop and they give you a fabric swatch. So then you can pin that to your board. Like, I just think it's more realistic. Even a cork board, if you buy a cheap cork board from whatever, Deals, IHIL, whatever, and pin some of the pictures and pin some of the fabrics, and then that starts becoming a real life mood board, I think, as well.
Yeah. So now we're on to mood boards, and this is really important because that is the critical step, isn't it, between seeing things you like on pictures and making it come to life in your house. So what are your top tips for
mood boards? I don't know. I don't know if I have top tips. I use different things. Typically, I'd use Google Slides or Canva or something, Microsoft PowerPoint, if you use Microsoft PowerPoint. And I literally just copy and paste, you know, the images I have, crop the images if there's a particular detail I like. And then when I'm going to look at like particular items, whether it's a piece of lighting or a tap style or a knob for a door or something like that, I go and I copy the image, or I press and hold the image on iPhone or remove the background and then add that into the...
That's a really good one. So the Photos app on your iPhone, if you have any picture of, you know, piece of furniture or something that you've seen online, if you press and hold the image, it
takes the
like,
outline.
So like copy sticker or something like that?
Yeah, sticker, create sticker. But you can also just copy it and it'll do this kind of like light up line around the perimeter of the item. And then you can kind of copy that and then just paste it into your mood board. And I just think it really elevates a mood board because you don't have this big white square around it that you're trying to kind of... And you can overlay things really nicely then. Yeah.
And if you don't have iPhone, I think you do it on your Android phone in Google Photos. You go into like edit photo and it's remove background or something like that. Yeah. Or if you're handy with the Photoshop or something like that, you can do it there too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a load of different apps. I suppose the main thing is it doesn't matter what app you use.
Yeah.
Whatever one you're most comfortable with, they'll all do enough.
Yeah.
For what you need.
And digital is a good place to start because you can just, I think there's an exploratory phase at the start of putting together a mood board where you should just throw in everything that catches your eye, I think, that you like the look of, and then start refining it down and be like, what is sustaining your interest? What works well together? Yeah. And then what can you start scrapping? And then you can start building your kind of more complete version. And then I would take it offline and put up the cork board and the physical photos and all that.
Yeah. But say, for example, you're looking at a bathroom, right? And you picked a particular tile and you've picked this lovely brass or chrome tap. I know you wouldn't pick chrome tap, you know.
I'm going around it now. You're really convincing me.
But when you're putting those in the same mood board, if you're tiling floor to ceiling, make that tile in your mood board huge and make the tap small.
That's so important because sometimes you put a mood board together and like you could have this big picture of a thing that's in your favorite color, but actually maybe it's a small armchair and it's not taking up enough space and it doesn't dominate the way you thought it would. So make sure that you're scaling all the little items to, you know, relative proportions to each other.
Exactly, relative proportions. And you don't need to have the repeated tile across the whole wall, but just that tile, that colour it's going to be, make that big if it's going to be floor to ceiling. Same as your paint colour. Sometimes I just search whatever paint colour I'm thinking of using and use one of the Google image samples or whatever. Like for some of them, there might be like a drop of paint in the colour and I copy and paste that in. But then in some other cases, I might use it as the background on the slide if it's going to be all the wall colour.
Great.
And then everything starts to kind of look nice against it or not.
Because you could end up choosing like this cool flooring sample that you've seen. But actually in real life, then it might totally overwhelm the space and just not go with everything else. So it does need to be in proportion.
Yeah, but that sticker thing I've been using a lot recently, and the way I've been kind of using add stickers one way of doing it. But if you're searching, say, an image for a Sophie you like or a tap you like or whatever, go to Google Images and pick the one that has a white background. It'll pick it the cleanest and it'll have a nice, you know, outline. Whereas sometimes if you try and pick, say, a picture of a sofa that's already in a room, it won't take the line of the sofa properly.
Gotcha.
You know? Okay. So to remove the background properly, just try and pick a kind of a white background image or a very plain background image. It'll work better.
Okay. Make it easy for the tech to put together.
Yeah, exactly.
There's one quote that I always love as well. Like once you've kind of put your room together or your image, you know, your mood board of your room together, Kate Watson-Smyth, who is one of my all-time heroes, she's got a great blog called Mad About the House. She does a really good podcast with Sophie Robinson. Really just a wonderful person to follow, and her writing is fantastic as well on interiors. But one thing she said in some interview or something somewhere years ago is every room should have something new, something old, something black, and something gold.
I love this.
Which can be interpreted kind of loosely, but what she means by having something new and something old means you don't have to go samey with everything. Like, don't do your entire room in IKEA. Like, layer in maybe some antique finds or something in a slightly different style. Like, you can mix and match a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Then something black is kind of back to that contrast point. It doesn't necessarily have to be black. It could be navy or it could be a really rich burgundy or something, but just something that's like a bold, dark colour. Dot that around the place to add in a bit of interest. Or maybe it's something light. Maybe your room's really dark. Yeah. You know, like your lovely brick coloured sofa, you've got light coloured cushions on that. And that's a lovely pop.
Yeah, the contrast, yeah.
And then by something gold, she means not necessarily gold, but something metallic. Make sure you're working metallics in somewhere. It doesn't have to overwhelm the room, but just,
It might even be a lamp or a light fitting or something
frame
like that.
or something like that. And that tends to bring together a fairly
I love that. It's very easy to remember as well. Something new, something old, something black and something gold.
It's great.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Thanks, Kate Watson.
Great tip.
Super.
Is there anything else you used to use for pulling together your style or mood boards early on?
I love Canva. I can't get enough of Canva. I think it's so handy. And I would do a different board for every room and just make sure it's all coming together.
Yeah.
The other thing I love is a website called coolers.co. And it's a palette generator. So once you've picked maybe your primary colour or your primary few colours, you can generate a palette and it just keeps pressing a button and it keeps generating new palettes.
That's cool.
And you can be like, oh, I love that one. And that will really help you pick, your accent colours and some different things that you can layer in. And
and we spoke about this, didn't we, in the colours and paint episodes. The spectrum of kind of shades of the same colour that are on paint cards are really useful to kind of, find things that will go well together or cohesive across a house. So in our previous house, we had a lot of versions of that same column that was in the Farrow Ball one.
Oh, yeah.
So most of our common areas were like shaded white, and then our bedroom was actually drop cloth, which is a shade deeper again, and our woodwork was the lighter one or whatever. So
I love that.
I just think it's a really easy way if you're unsure if you're picking the right palettes across kind of paint, at least in your house. It's a good way of doing it, I think.
It's brilliant. So lots of different kind of shades of the same colour, really, and it really ensures that all your undertones are matching and that you're on track.
But I also think for me, I always kind of gravitate more towards stony kind of earthy colours in a house. I don't tend more toward kind of jewelry colours, but I think they kind of go well together. It's kind of all earthy or kind of more those vivid colours. It depends what you're kind of after, I guess.
Yeah, I'm very much in the jewelry. I love the jewelry.
Yeah, but then you have a very kind of calm palette.
Yeah, they do match. Yeah, you're right, they do. But
you have a very calm palette, which anything will go against.
Because the colours aren't too
colour
bright, I think. It's subtle.
Yeah, it's subtle. That.
Anything else you use? Any other tools or?
I actually, for the odd time, if I want to do something really quick, I use Instagram stories, but then don't post the story. Just save it as an image.
Talk to me about that now.
So it's kind of, you can bring images in as photos. So you create an Instagram story and then add images from your
so
like
if
camera
you've really quickly taken a load of screenshots or something like that,
exactly.
Things you go gotcha.
You take
download the
screenshots,
story,
crop them, and then go into Instagram stories and just put them in that way. Add them as stickers, add them as the full images, cropped images, whatever you want, and you can layer them really easily without having to go into a third party thing like Canva or Google Slides or whatever. But Google Slides, I love it, but I only use it on my laptop. It's kind of crap on the phone.
Okay.
For
Canva, I think Canva is much better on the phone.
Is it?
I love Canva on my phone. Yeah.
I find some of them it's very hard to pinch and crop and stuff when it's tiny on your phone.
Yeah.
That's why I tend to do it more.
It's there's too much functionality in it.
Yeah.
It's just too much to fit into one little phone, and you only need this tiny sliver of functionality. Exactly. So it's not really worth it. Yeah.
But it's actually a really kind of quick and dirty way to pull together a mood board is Instagram stories, but just don't post your stories or do if you want to, whatever you do.
And then you just have to put it into practice.
Yeah.
After you have all that, after you have your mood board, after you've worked it all out, I think you have to just get hands-on with just putting things somewhere. Okay, maybe a couch is a bit of a tall order for that, but all the little knickknacks, all the little accessories.
Yeah.
You just have to practice and see how it goes,
Yeah. You'll find your style. Just be confident with that, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And like you said at the start, start to identify what you like in pictures.
Have a critical eye.
Just keep saying, why do I keep gravitating toward this one? Or like you were talking about Mad About the House and Kate Watson, I've actually pinned a load of things from her unknowing it was her on Pinterest. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, it's Mad About the House again. Oh, it's Mad About the House again. So she tends to post obviously a specific style that I gravitate more toward.
Yeah, she has great taste. I just love her.
Yeah, she is very good.
Yeah.
But I think knowing what you like in a picture versus I just like that overall picture.
Yeah, it'll really help you.
Yeah, I think it'll help you, further your style and own your style a bit more as you go in.
Yeah, because once you know why you like something and what you like about it, you can replicate that within your own, maybe it's a different colour palette or a different shape or size or something like that, but you can replicate it once you know how it works. Yeah. Nerds. All right, I think that's it.
I think that's
Go
it.
forth and make a load of mood boards and just have fun with it. They can all be thrown out and started again.
Exactly.
It's the beauty of it.
You can't get it wrong. Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you soon, guys.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
If you found that episode useful, please do us a huge favour by giving us a like and a few stars, and especially click that subscribe button. Thank you.